Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing okay in this mad world that we find ourselves in. I'm here today to give you a bit of an update on the first work package of the Enabling Sustainable Emergency Volunteering project. So that's the Emergency Volunteering 2030 Adapting the Sector study that myself and my colleague Charm Kruger have been working on. It's been quite a while since we've had a formal end user meeting or update, August last year in fact. We have connected with quite a few of our end users through either the AFAC Volunteer Management Technical Group or one-on-one for various bits and pieces, but haven't had a formal project update as a group. And we thought by pre-recording and sending them out to you, you could have a look at them in your own time and then provide any comments or feedback via the little form in the link in the email at your leisure. I'll just get started first. Yeah, by just giving a bit of a reminder about what this part of the project's about. So the outcome that this project is aiming to contribute to is supporting the emergency management sector to put itself in the best position possible to enable the value of volunteering for communities before, during and after emergencies into the future. And in this part of the project, we're organisation blind, so we don't care basically what organisational affiliation volunteers have. Consider any volunteering that's providing value to communities wherever it may occur. And it's adopting a strategic foresight approach. So we are developing some inputs that organisations can use in strategic foresight processes. Strategic foresight, it's closely associated with scenario planning and is about looking to the future and understand the implications of potential alternative future scenarios for today's decision making. So it's really moving away from an assumption of continuity in the trends that we can see today and expecting that those trends will unfold in a linear way into the future. And so considering different possibilities for how some of those trends and uncertainties impact on the future and factoring that into strategic planning today. And it's often that little diagram there of the cones is called the future cone. That kind of just shows how the future can follow different trajectories depending on how forces shift and change, perhaps not in the way that we currently expect them to. So there's different ways to do futures research or foresight focused research. We're adopting a narrative approach. So rather than being empirical and driven by data, we're looking at stories that are told about the future and how we currently understand the future. And narrative foresight is really looking at how the stories we tell about the future currently constrain the possibilities and the strategic options we consider or enable options. And the intention is to expand the range of strategic options that are considered and the range of issues that strategic planning takes into consideration today looking forward. And so I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen, but so the approach we've taken is, first of all, this big environmental scan. We consulted and spoke with 183 different people from different stakeholder groups shown there in the boxes and asked them questions about the current situation with volunteering in the future. A lot of our end user groups were involved in that, and that's given us a picture of how volunteering has changed up until the present day and the trends that we expect to see impacting it and the current trajectory we see ourselves on, and that's heading towards that baseline future and also pictures of a preferred future for volunteering. We then synthesised that and then at the end of last year conducted an expert panel, which we call a Delphi, which is where you bring a group of people together to develop a collective view on some complex issue. And for us, we use that to help us prioritise amongst the range of factors that people gave to us that they expected to shape the future of emergency volunteering, which ones of those were most important and which ones of those had the most degree of uncertainty around them. So that's sort of prioritising from amongst the range of factors. And we use the outcomes of that to develop some draft scenarios to capture people's fears, expectations, hopes for the future of emergency volunteering and how we currently the degree of certainty we have about the kinds of trends that are going to shift and change and impact emergency volunteering moving forward. So what we've done since August in particular, so the two reports there with the two arrows above them are ones that have been prepared since we last spoke with the end user group. So that's a report that is presenting views from emergency response volunteer representatives. So they're reps of volunteer associations and consultative committees, etc. So they have representative roles in representing volunteers. So we approach them as key informants. And a synthesis report that brings together the major themes across the different environmental scan reports we have, which the four there shown on the left side are views from managers that work in volunteerism in response and recovery agencies. The second one is views from people who have worked around emergency volunteering in local government. The third one is views from people who've worked with volunteers around emergencies from the community sector, a wide range of organisations there. And then the last two with volunteer representatives and the synthesis. The synthesis report also brings in views from some community engagement managers from response agencies and volunteering peak body input as well, and kind of captures some of the key themes and differences across those groups and the influences and trends and shifts and expectations that those groups conveyed to us in that environmental scan. Also, since August, we've undertaken the Delphi process. There are 86 people involved in that. It was in 2 rounds. It's an anonymous online process where you get a panel of people to come together and provide input on certain questions. Then they get to review what everybody said about those questions and what the responses from everyone was, and can take that into account in a second round of responses. And what we were asking there was for them to kind of rate and rank the most important drivers shaping volunteering, and to help us identify which ones of those there was a greater amount of certainty about how they are going to unfold and what kinds of impacts they're going to have on volunteering. So from that, we have I have an internal document documenting that at the moment that I need to get some feedback on before I convert that into a public document. But I also have within that, we have a list of contributing drivers that the group considered were important for the future of emergency volunteering, 21 of which are trends, so widely agreed, and as being quite predictable in how they're going to unfold, and 26 have quite a high degree of uncertainty in how they're going to unfold or what impact they're going to have. So I've grouped those into clusters of 4 major kind of mega trends and 3 scenario drivers, which are 3 areas of greatest and most influential uncertainty, and have used those to develop 4 alternative future scenarios that volunteer-based emergency management organisations could find themselves facing over the next 10 years. And we will be sharing some recorded research presentations with you fairly soon, and the recorded research presentation I'll be sharing will be going through those and explaining what those are, and going through them all for you. But just to show you, if you're curious, the scenarios that are currently still draft because they need to be kind of workshopped and refined and more people look at them and cast their eye over them and give me feedback on them. So that's 4 there. I won't go through them. As I said, they'll be in the presentation, but that's just for curiosity purposes. You can pause the video and have a look at them if you like. Yeah. And it's got there the 3 main areas of uncertainty that are driving the differences in those 4 scenarios as well. Okay, so what I'm doing next, I say what I'm doing next instead of what we are doing next there, as Tan actually left the project at the end of August last year, which was planned. So it's been myself working part-time since then. So what I'll be working on next is finalising feedback on those 2 reports that I showed you with the arrows. They're not public yet. I need to kind of attend to a couple of areas of feedback that I need before I feel confident it's okay to share those publicly, and of getting some feedback on those draft scenarios so I can kind of refine and make sure that they're useful for people as well. I'm currently writing 2 academic outputs as well, a journal article and book chapter. And then the next thing that I'm prepping at the moment is preparing some communications that are not research reports and research communications, but broad like issue communications. And the formats I'm looking at there is a scenarios report, which is not a dry research presentation, but more of an accessible report. And I've got an example there that the Boston Consulting Group did for the APS, as future scenarios for the APS for 2030. I don't think I can do something quite as glossy as they have, but it should be something quite well presented and easy to access. And also some issue briefs, which are like policy briefs, sort of short 2-3 page briefs on key topics that have come out and themes that have come out of the research. I'll also be feeding into the Workforce 2030 project that Jane is explaining to you in a separate update. You have the link in this email as well. That'll be a big key piece of work that we're doing over the next few months. The 2 items there I've got in italics are things that are kind of possibilities but not yet determined. So I was involved with a workshop with a volunteer management tech group a few weeks ago, and there's an opportunity potentially for me to contribute to or feed into some future work planning for that group that I'll be having some more discussions about. So I'm hoping that there's something I can do that is valuable and useful in supporting some of the forward-looking work that the volunteer management tech group is talking about. And then scenario planning workshops. So that's using those scenarios and working through the implications of those. You can do that in different settings for organisations, for teams, for locations. And that's really where the benefit of scenarios and considering uncertainties comes into play. I had put those on hold because I'd had feedback, or that concept on hold because I'd had feedback back while inquiries, etc., were happening. And with COVID-19, everything this year, that it wouldn't be realistic for people to be doing those on a grand scale. If you are interested or think that your organisation or your teams would be interested in doing some workshops or thinking with future scenarios, I'd be really pleased to hear from you and really happy to talk about possibilities and opportunities around something like that. And that's pretty much it. I've got a few questions there that I'll put in our little feedback survey link as well for you. Firstly, I have there, so what would you like to see summarised in an issue brief? So issues briefs kind of capture what we know about issues that are relevant for policy or management at the moment. So what kinds of issues would you like to see documented in an issue brief, or could be useful to you? If you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. And also, can I help in some way in feeding into processes that you have it going on as their workshops or presentations or anything like that? I'm very happy to talk to end users about doing some work of thinking about trends, uncertainties, sharing with you. I've got over 700 pages of commentary from over 183 interviewees and respondents on surveys. So there's a lot of material there that I can mine for information for you, can speak to in discussions with teams, staff, etc. So I'm really open to any suggestions you have on that. And then the other question I have there is really about audience. So who most needs to consider implications of trends and future scenarios for emergency volunteering? I often find that with the people, agency people I speak with, like yourselves, you know all this stuff already. But there are people out there who don't or aren't, who work around the volunteering environment, that perhaps in government or in other areas of organisations that could be more impactful audiences for me to be trying to communicate with. And so to get some input from you on who that should be and how I could best communicate some different ideas to them in ways that would help you in some of the work that you're trying to do in your organisations is something that I'd be happy to talk to about and get some feedback on as well. So that's it. There's a little QSR code there as well. You can scan that. Will take you to a a page where you can access project resources, including these slides and reports and webinars and presentations and a bunch of things there. Thanks very much. Looking forward to getting some feedback from some of you, and again, really hope everybody's coping well in the strange world of 2020. Yeah, all my best.